Thanks so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, a lot to get to. After its largest rocket barrage yet, Hezbollah promising even worse attacks to come. And we'll have an in-depth look at the brutal strikes against Israel over the last several months and what the confrontations could mean for the United States. Southern Baptists holding key votes on major issues, like how to handle churches with women pastors and more. Why are more Gen Z women leaving the church than men? And as Father's Day approaches, how Christian dads can play a key role in their children's relationship with God. All those stories and more ahead today on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin this half hour in northern Israel as Hezbollah promises even worse attacks after a massive rocket barrage Wednesday, even as Hamas is making more demands for a ceasefire in Gaza. CBN's Julie Stahl has the story. She's reporting from Jerusalem.
As Israelis mark the biblical holiday of Shavuot, Iranian-backed Hezbollah launched more than 200 rockets at northern Israel, the most ever in a single day. Earlier, the Israeli Air Force struck a major Hezbollah command center in southern Lebanon, killing one of its most senior leaders who had carried out attacks against Israeli civilians for years. In response, a Hezbollah official pledged a dramatic increase in the strength, intensity, and number of attacks, threatening if the Israelis are crying about what happens to them in the north, they should prepare to wail and weep soon. Northern Israel has endured near daily attacks since Hamas launched the deadly October 7th attack on Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with the heads of Israel's military, security, and emergency services late Wednesday over the situation in northern Israel. The ramp-up in the north comes as a push for a ceasefire in Gaza has stalled out after Hamas added new demands that Israel can't accept. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is blaming the terror group for sinking the deal.
A deal that the entire world is behind, a deal Israel's accepted, and Hamas could have answered with a single word: yes. Instead, Hamas waited nearly 2 weeks and then proposed more changes, a number of which go beyond positions that it previously taken and accepted.
Hamas apparently now wants the war to end permanently in the first phase of the ceasefire before releasing the hostages. It also doesn't guarantee it will release all the hostages. Blinken continues to push for an agreement and a day-after plan to govern Gaza that does not include Hamas.
Ultimately, it may not be the path that Hamas wants to pursue, but Hamas cannot and will not be allowed to decide the future for this region and its people.
Meanwhile, the recently rescued hostages are revealing more about their ordeal. The three men say they were held in a dark room for 6 months, beaten by their guards, and covered with blankets in very hot weather. Still, Andrei Kozov's father says his son seems optimistic about the future.
He said there were some things that he would never tell us about what happened to him, but he talks about the things he talks about with a lot of humor.
As temperatures soar in Israel and Gaza, there are still 120 hostages in Hamas captivity, about 80 believed to be alive. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
The latest barrage of rocket attacks has again raised concerns of an all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah. Chris Mitchell shows us what's been happening and what it could mean for the United States.
Reserve Lieutenant Colonel Eyal Dror is one of the nearly 100,000 Israelis who have fled their homes in the north.
We are living 7 months out of our home because of this war. We are trying to go back home, but I think that the most important message is that we deserve to live. I'm living in the northern part of Israel, a mile from the Israeli-Lebanese border, and I think that I have all the right to live peacefully without thinking whether Hezbollah will slaughter my family.
For years, those in the region have lived under the shadow of the terror group.
You know, I came here a few days ago, and I love the North. I walked paths and trails, and I was angry that I couldn't walk and drive where I wanted to go. I can only imagine what it's like for the Israeli people that live here.
American author Clifford Sobin wrote, "Israel's struggle with Hezbollah, a war without end." He's in Israel to talk about the connection between Hezbollah and Iran.
My message today is that there are two things that need to happen. One, it's important to explain the central narrative that people here have a right to exist in safety and freedom. And secondly, to show how Hezbollah is impacting that and show it through their own videos.
Those videos prove the danger of Hezbollah.
I showed a video of Hezbollah destroying a home through the sights of an anti-tank missile, and I showed a video of Hezbollah's statement saying they want to destroy Israel. These are the things that I think have to be expressed to the American public. It's part of a conversation. It's not the end, but it's the start of a conversation.
Sobin says Americans need to know why it's important to understand the extent of the terrorist support and reach.
It's because it's one of Iran's proxies, and it's part of the whole all the Iranian tentacles. On top of that, Hezbollah operates criminal operations in the United States. So it's a threat to the United States, it's a threat to Europe, it's certainly a threat to Israel, and it's part of Iran's strength. Israel's the canary in the coal mine. What starts here comes to the United States. There's no doubt about it. The United States is facing that battle, and so is Western Europe. But not everybody wants to understand that that battle is coming.
For Israel, the battle is already here.
It's a war of attrition. Every day, there are attacks coming from Lebanon against the IDF, and the IDF response or trying to prevent these attacks.
Zarit Zahavi of the Alma Education and Research Center studies the security challenges along Israel's northern borders.
Like if I'm trying to describe the relationship between Iran and Hezbollah, Iran is the international company, huge company, and Hezbollah is one of the senior CEOs of this company. So Iran listens to its most senior CEO, to its needs, to its recommendations, but eventually Iran is the boss. Iran is providing Hezbollah with the munition, the ideology, and the money. And eventually, once Iran gives the order, Hezbollah will be there.
Zahavi points out why Hezbollah is a much more formidable enemy than Hamas.
The fire, meaning rockets and drones and missiles, is 10 times more than Hamas. More than 200,000 different types of artilleries like that. With Radwan brigades, this is the commando units of Hezbollah. They are not only trained for an invasion and occupying communities, they had done so in Syria. They are experienced in that. And the tunnels that you've seen in Gaza exist the same way in Lebanon.
We asked her about the likelihood of all-out war.
To tell you the truth, every morning when I wake up, I ask the same question, where this is going, because we want to see the people coming back to their homes, and we don't know how. It is clear to us that the capabilities of Hezbollah cannot remain the same. Something needs to be done. IDF will have to take care of that. I'm not sure that it would be an all-out war, but it should be more than what is happening now.
Given her close proximity to those terrorist commandos, we also asked her about Hezbollah flags on U.S. college campuses and why Americans need to pay attention.
Because you're next, in one sentence. That's it. You see this in the universities. There were already Hezbollah flags in the universities. There were already chants, death to America, in America. This is not a coincidence. It's part of a campaign that Iran is having, which has bombs and has soft power, using cyber, using social media to incite the young people of the United States against America itself. Now, you may say it's a minority. I agree. But if you will not deal with that, it will not stay like that. You have to deal with it now in your country before it will become something much greater.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up here at home, big votes on big issues for Southern Baptists, including how to handle churches with women pastors and taking a position on in vitro fertilization. We're going to have the story for you when we come back. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. Some big votes on multiple important issues for the Southern Baptists at their annual convention this week, and they've chosen a new president. CBN's Charlene Aaron is on the story.
On the final day of their annual meeting, Southern Baptists rejected an amendment to formally ban churches with women pastors. They also voted to oppose in vitro fertilization.
As many as are opposed, would you indicate by lifting your ballots?
In one of the most anticipated votes, the delegates called messengers voted down a measure enshrining a ban on churches with women pastors in the convention's constitution.
It failed to reach the two-thirds threshold that's required to make it an amendment.
Earlier, they expelled a Virginia church that believes women can serve as a senior pastor.
Women have had a prominent role within the ministry and pastoral positions within the leadership of First Alexandria for over 44 years.
The SBC deemed the church's stance in conflict with the Baptist faith and message. Ed Stetzer, dean of Talbot School of Theology at Biola University, says the narrow defeat sends a message.
By the amendment failing, it means there's not a new rule in place that, for example, you can't use the word pastor at any term like children's pastor that a woman might be in. So that tells you that the vast majority of Southern Baptists want to hold the line at a complementarian view.
Lawrence Smith is a messenger and communications director for the Kentucky Baptist Convention.
It just shows you that Southern Baptists are determined to abide by what the scripture says about the office of pastor.
The SBC also grappled with the ethics of in vitro fertilization, moving to express concern about the procedure, particularly surplus embryos. A resolution called on Baptists to reaffirm the unconditional value and right to life of every human being, including those in the embryonic stage, and to only utilize reproductive technologies consistent with that affirmation, especially in the number of embryos generated in the IVF process. The denomination also voted to continue the work of abuse reform. A task force formed 2 years ago to create resources and build a database of pastors accused of abuse is expiring. With the database still not created, the messengers voted to hand over the issue to the executive committee.
For the sake of just the rightness, the goodness of followers of Jesus doing what they should do, there needs to be paths to take it seriously. And what I would say is it's not going to be easy, and it may be one of the more controversial things that they lead, but that's what leaders do.
Meanwhile, from a field of 6 candidates, the SBC elected North Carolina's Clint Presley as its new president. Presley is known for his conservative leadership style.
It took 2 ballots, or 3 actually, to elect someone, but I think Clint's going to do a great job, a great man of God, and he'll do a lot to. If there are any lingering fractures among the messengers, among our convention, he'll work to heal those.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Still ahead, why are more young women from the Generation Z leaving the church than young men? We'll take a look at this right after. Young Americans are leaving church, and surprisingly, women, not men, are leading the way. A poll released by the American Survey Center found 54% of Gen Z women have disaffiliated from religion, compared to 46% of Gen Z men. On this week's edition of the Global Lane Campus Reform correspondent, Emily Sturge says that alarming change is due to false narratives about Christianity and feminism.
The left and the Democratic Party has sold this lie to young women in my generation, and they've told us that in order to be free in today's society, we need to reject traditional roles like being a mother or like being a wife, and instead focus on our careers and sacrifice our family life. As a Gen Z woman, I've seen how women in my generation have fallen victim to these feminist lies, and I've seen how women around me on my own college campus have completely demonized traditional values, and they've rejected religion as a result. I think the root of this problem runs very, very deep, and in order to understand it, we need to look at the radical lies and propaganda that the modern feminist movement directs at women in my generation.
Well, I was astonished to learn that 61% of Gen Z women identify as feminists, and that's the highest ever. 31%, almost 1/3, identify as LGBT. So tell us about your own experience in the classroom. What are professors telling their students about motherhood, sexuality, and marriage?
I had one professor, a male professor, who constantly perpetuated this ideology and claimed that women are not equal to men in today's society and told women like me that we're actually oppressed in today's society. I believe this is a classic example of how the left manipulates young women into believing that we're oppressed, and then they go ahead and tell us that in order to be free or in order to be liberated in today's society, we need to reject traditional values like being a mother or like being a wife. We need to reject religion in order to be free. That's why we're seeing so many young women misled into embracing leftist ideology and abandoning their faith as a result.
Well, as a result of that, Gen Z is now believed to be the loneliest generation, and many of us boomers thought COVID shutdowns caused that, but I know you believe it's also a result of this indoctrination. So what is the effect on families, on the mental health of young adults?
When we look at this trend of young women leaving religion, it's very important to note the mental health implications. Data does show that Gen Z is the loneliest generation and is facing a mental health crisis. Gen Z women in particular report lower mental health than Gen Z men. I think religion provides community, it provides social support, it provides hope for the future. And as more members of Gen Z, specifically women, are rejecting religion, we're left with a generation of young people who are struggling to find purpose and meaning and community, which is contributing greatly to this mental health crisis.
Well, what do you tell fellow students about the importance of faith and traditional values in their lives?
I think in order to be a rebel in today's society, it sounds kind of funny, but it means to put God first, and it means to be a loving mother, and it means to be a loving wife, even while having a career, and I plan to do just that. I am a Gen Z woman who is embracing my religion. I am embracing traditional values, even though the modern feminist movement tells me that I should do the exact opposite. I am excited to embrace having a family one day. I'm excited to embrace traditional values like being a wife, because that's what I believe brings true happiness. I believe embracing religion and embracing God in my life is what brings true happiness.
Well, what needs to be done then to turn Gen Z around on faith, family, and moral values? What do you think?
I think we need to go back to embracing traditional values in our society. Traditional and religious values once made our country strong, and the left and the Democratic Party is doing everything in their power, it seems, to erase these values from our society.
And I can't let you go without asking about anti-Semitism on campus. I know Jewish students at UCLA are suing the university for not taking a tougher stance against anti-Semitic protests, but the University of Florida did take a tough stance against the anti-Israel protesters. So what's the mood and climate on campus like now at Gainesville?
Florida is a law and order state, and I was very excited to see my university uphold these values and arrest the protesters on our campus. Protesters took over our campus during finals week. They were causing massive distractions, massive disruptions. The university issued warnings, and then when protesters did not follow these warnings, the university took action and arrested these protesters. I believe my university made the right move in protecting the students, protecting the faculty, and protecting our campus community. And I hope to see other schools continue to act in a similar way as to how my university did. I think universities need to be prioritizing the health and safety of campus communities, and the way to do that is to handle these protesters by arresting them.
Okay, education and protecting their safety, that's number one. Emily Sturge, campus reform correspondent at the University of Florida. Thank you for setting us straight today. We appreciate it, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me.
Also on this week's episode of The Global Lane, assassinating the presidency, not with bullets, but government bureaucrats. And healthcare professionals admit scientific evidence proves gender-changing procedures harm healthy bodies. You can see it all on The Global Lane this evening on the CBN News Channel. It begins at 8 Eastern. You can also see it on the CBN News app or watch it on YouTube. Coming up, as Father's Day approaches, we're going to look at the impact Christian dads can have on their children's lives and their relationship with God. We've got the story for you when we come back. Research shows children are more likely to thrive when their fathers are present in their lives. Author Justin Early says the question for many Christian dads is not just being there for their children, but how they do it. Heather Sells has the story.
If you're a young Christian parent struggling with discipline, I have a habit I want to share with you.
In raising their 4 boys, attorney Justin Early and his wife say the heart of parenting lies within that major area.
Our habits of the household are one of the most significant parts of our children's spiritual formation.
In his book, Habits of the Household, Early makes the case that parents' routines can either point their kids to God or turn them away. They include the daily rhythms of waking up and going to bed, meals, discipline, and conversation.
All of these things are just ways to look and see that the ordinary moments of our day with kids are some of the most extraordinary moments for their spiritual formation.
Early uses his book and social media platforms to share ways to intentionally think through daily routines and focus on what's important, like mealtime.
The busy schedule is not the center of gravity of the household. The table should be the center of gravity because that means community is the center of gravity.
No devices and asking simple, specific questions of everyone can encourage better communication. At bedtime, he advocates habitual prayers or blessings for children. And in the morning, he emphasizes prayer first for the parents. Early's #1 habit to recommend:
learn to put your phone away for at least an hour every single day.
He puts his in a box by the front door, right when he gets home from work.
The idea that I'm around my kids but not with them because I'm distracted by my screen, I think is one of the major threats to so many dads and their children right now.
Early maintains our theology and faith make themselves known through the regular rhythms of life, and they powerfully influence our children, whether we're paying attention or not. Heather Sells, CBN News.
We leave you with this Thursday thankful. God, thank you for loving me in spite of me. You see me in full and you still love me fully. There is no greater love. Help me to lean into that love and not lose sight of it. It's a gift that gives me life, and it's a full life filled with love. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Goodbye. God bless.